So for the remainder of the concert, Carl, we have the work that Beethoven once supposedly famously danced to, because he described it as the apotheosis of the dance. I once researched Beethoven symphonies played by orchestras, and it turns out it's not the fifth, it's not the ninth, because financially that's kind of expensive. The most often performed symphony of Beethoven is the seventh, and with
Yes,
darn good reason.
absolutely. I mean, it's just from like the concerto that we just discussed. I mean, from the very first notes to the very final, and as you said, the Wagner called the last movement the apotheosis of the dance. It's just a gem in every sense of the word. It sort of finished his middle period, which was kind of called loosely by some musicologists the heroic decade. From like 1803 to 1813, when this was actually premiered on December 8th. And along right after that came the final version of Leonora, Fidelio. But it's an incredible symphony. And there's, like I said, every piece, every soloist, every guest during our season and every work has this very special place. And there are two reasons why Beethoven 7 had to be somewhere on this season. And also you have to understand that not many works could follow a Prokofiev third piano concerto that are written in the classical realm because of the absolute virtuosity, the color, the grandeur of this concerto. But Beethoven 7 is certainly one of those. But on August 19th, 1990, Leonard Bernstein, the great Leonard Bernstein, conducted his final concert in the shed at Tanglewood. And the final work that he conducted that afternoon was Beethoven 7. And that ended up ultimately being the very, very last concert of his life that he conducted and heard. So, and I happened to be the cover conductor for Mr. B during that week and was sitting literally with his 93-year-old mother doing that performance in the radio booth. And I remember her holding my hand, and we had a camera right on Mr. B so that we could ensure that he was okay, because as we all know, his well-being was in jeopardy. He was not in great health at that particular time. And, she was just so caring about how he was doing, because I don't know, there are really no videos of that, but there was a kind of a coughing spell between the third and fourth movement. And, but it was a very, very historical afternoon at the shed, I must say, and for me. And so I realized that I was coming to the Pacific Symphony, this was in August, and I already knew that he was conducting Beethoven 7 and that I would be his assistant. So the very first concert as music director of the Pacific Symphony some 30 years ago, I programmed Beethoven's 7th Symphony. Because I knew I would be just rife with enthusiasm and Bernstein inspiration. So it started my program. It was the final part of the program of my very first concert as music director, and it's a piece that the orchestra and I love performing together. And as you say, it's just great. And just so you know, this particular symphony was premiered on December 8th, 1813, just a few days, just like on October 30th and 31st, there was a huge battle of Hanau between the Austrian Bavarian soldiers and Napoleonic forces. And there were lots of wounded people over this absolutely slaughterous day. And so this symphony was not performed for the upper elite, people behind tall walls with moats separating them. This was performed literally for wounded soldiers. And it was amazing. And there's so many historical important facts about this. Number one was who joined Beethoven on this concert. I mean, Louis Spohr was the concertmaster. Louis Spohr was a concertmaster, virtuoso violinist, great composer. Meyerbeer, who's also a composer that we know, was playing. Dragonetti was in the bass section. Salieri was in there. Nepo Muckhummel was there playing. So they were not just playing because it was Beethoven. They were playing because of what the concert meant. It was a concert for wounded soldiers. And interestingly enough, Beethoven even address the audience that night, which I'm not sure how common that was. But, and this is a quote, "We are moved by nothing but pure patriotism and the joyful sacrifice of our powers for those who have sacrificed so much for us." And I think about everybody on the front lines today sacrificing so much. And so this symphony, even to this day, and of course, you know, what was interesting about it, it wasn't the rambunctious first movement with this grand introduction or the dancing third movement or the apotheosis of the dance finale in a rondo form. It was the second movement that had to be repeated. I mean, the soldiers just applauded. It's an allegretto. But you know, when I read that the soldiers demanded a repeat of that, it changed my tempo. It changed everything.
Really?
Because if I'm a wounded soldier just having fought in battles, and I'm listening to this second movement, if it's too fast and happy, I don't know. But if it's a little more dirge-like and boom, 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 I might fall into a more reflective sort of state, and might be able to deal and have a sense of reflection of what we all lived through, or what my friends or those people that didn't make it out of that war or that battle. So it changed my interpretation quite a bit when I read the account of this, of him conducting.
I mean, at its essence, ambiguity seems to be what that movement's all about. It's almost a mock funeral march, because the major and minor juxtapositions just seem to come out of nowhere, you know, if you listen to it with fresh ears, and you really don't know. There's, like I said, it seems to me that ambiguous is what that movement's really all about.
I was ambiguous until I read the written account by Louis Spohr of that concert, and I read he talks about not Bernstein's, but also Beethoven's gestures as he approaches a forte, that he would jump way up or he would get way down on pianos. And it talked a little bit about his nonverbal or his communicative language as a conductor to the musicians. And so it's a piece that every time I come back to it, I find more in it each and every time. And I'm just so happy that it ended up in December of my 30th anniversary. And it was a piece that the orchestra, the great friends and dear friends, just have a chance of sharing again.
And speaking of little surprises, Carl, when's the last time you saw this? There it is, the cover from that concert.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you know, the 4C interludes was a piece that KUSC had conducted. And what's also not on that concert is a piece called Arias and Barcarolles,
right?
Which is Bernstein's final work. And Mr. B was just a little too frail to conduct that. And so he gave me the great honor of premiering his last work on a program which ended up inevitably being his last concert. It's something that I will always treasure and feel really grateful for that opportunity, and so proud that I could come through for him in a way that he was happy.
Well, I tell you what, I think it seems nothing more appropriate than we've been talking so much about the Beethoven, and it's going to be on the concert tonight at 7 o'clock. How about the last 3 minutes or so of the Beethoven 7th with you conducting live? Shall we? Well,
I don't know about my conducting. The orchestra sounds like it's great, and I will tell you, Beethoven is at his best.
All right, here we go. Just a little bit of tonight's Beethoven 7th with Carl St.Clair and Pacific Symphony. Bravo. You know,
And, you know,
a very attentive viewer might have noticed that you conducted the Beethoven Seventh without a score.
well, I mean, listen,
Yeah.
it's in your heart, you know. But what's so exciting to me, and I will tell you that during this pandemic, if we didn't have these video clips so that I could see those incredible musicians of the Pacific Symphony, pardon me, almost anytime I want to, if I get really feeling homesick for them or really just sad that we're not on stage, I watch that. Look at that invigorated, just absolutely 100% committed playing from those musicians and the joy that we're all having on that stage. I mean, that's what we're going to bring back to everybody just as soon as we possibly can. When everybody's able to come back and we're able to come back in safety, and that's what we miss is performing like that. And I tell you, it just both gives me courage and inspiration to go forward, and it just breaks my heart that we're not able to do it on a daily basis. But I just love those players and what dedication and every ounce of energy and the smiles on the people's faces and the intensity of what they're doing. I mean, this is your Pacific Symphony, and this is what we stand for. And nothing brings that out in anybody better than Beethoven, because he had that same fire in his belly as we all do when we perform for you.
Well, on that cheerful note, tonight at 7 o'clock, starting in 15 minutes, the entire concert, the Beethoven Seventh, as well as Vadim Kolodenko joining the orchestra in the Prokofiev Piano Concerto No. 3. The concert beginning with a work written for Carl St.Clair's 30th anniversary with the orchestra, a work by Elliot Goldenthal, who was kind enough to join us earlier. Carl, always a pleasure to be with you. Let's do it again next Sunday at about 6 o'clock, shall we?
I definitely will. I'll be here. Listen, enjoy the concert, and hello to all the KUSC listeners and family. We're so happy that you tune in on Sunday nights at 7 to hear your Pacific Symphony. Thanks,
All right.
Rich. Great to be with you.
Stay healthy. Bye, folks.